Another super long injury for Zion Williamson was met with another overtime loss for the New Orleans Pelicans. And luckily, there's another episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's get into the Wednesday episode.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, the number one sports podcast network in the nation. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. You can also watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It's where you're already watching your games. You're listening to Antonio Daniels and Joel Myers. I'm your host for today, Pelicans insider, credentialed member of the media, Dylan Sanders. You can find me over on Twitter at Dilly Sanders, and I'm also the publisher of Pelicans Roundtable, which is a fun community of basketball fans. Come hang out with us over there, talk about your latest Pelicans thoughts. Today, we're going to be talking about the young players from the team showing some fight, why that's a good thing to take away from this 3-19 start. We're going to talk about the loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves in overtime, heartbreaking loss. But I think we have to start off today with the biggest news out of the day, Zion Williamson. Another long injury, a long absence for him. I think it's time to move on. We're going to talk about that right off the bat. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right. I think I have to start off this conversation with this. There is no at all ill will towards Zion Williamson. I am sure, unlike what a lot of people I think, he does not want to miss every game. He doesn't want to. He would rather be out on the court playing than sitting on the sidelines injured. There's no part of me that believes that he is getting hurt on purpose or not wanting to be out there. But that's just simply not the case. He is out all the time. I'm going to read off through 7 years his games played. 24 games played in 2019, 2020. 61 games played in 2020, 21. That was the COVID year. It was shortened. He missed all of 2021, 2022 for injury. 29 games played in 2022, 2023. 70 games played in 2023, 2024. That's a positive sign. Only 30 games played last year, and he's played in 10 of the 22 games so far this year. And who knows when he's going to suit up next for the Pelicans. Shams Charania broke the news earlier this morning that Zion Williamson would be missing an extended period of time with a right adductor strain. Now, it is said that he's going to be reevaluated in 3 weeks, but that means nothing, really. If you look at the Jordan Poole injury timeline, the Herb Jones timeline, these, reevaluations aren't a good, barometer for how much time a player is actually going to miss. And Shams also followed up his initial report by saying he missed about 2.5 weeks to start the season. This one is expected to sideline him for much longer than that. So at minimum 3 weeks, but we're probably looking at, I guess via Shams, way longer than that. And my first question is, what happened? We know he was dealing with the hamstring. He played against the Golden State Warriors. He missed the game against the Lakers for rest. It wasn't this strain that was brought up. Nothing was brought up. And then he was taken off the injury report completely. And then now, this morning, out of nowhere, he's out for weeks. What happened? Where did this come from? And I think that exact feeling of how did this happen? Where does this come from? Is the exact feeling that makes me think the time for Zion Williamson on the New Orleans Pelicans should probably come to an end at some point soon. there's just, I mean, you walk into the Smoothie King Center today, and the attendance was down again. People were upset. People, whenever they showed like the inactive list on the jumbotron, it said Zion Williamson went out. You could hear people being like, "Oh!" Every time someone walked past us, they were talking about Zion Williamson. And honestly, with how much this fan base is frustrated right now, you can't be frustrated at him for not playing if he's not on the team. I think whenever he's on the court, he is, a game changer. This team is better with him on the court. Metrically, visually, it kind of looks like they're playing just as good, if not better, without him. Who knows if that's like more of a James Borrego thing and like the system kind of clicking. On defense, they're definitely better with him. On offense, it's kind of a question right now. But he is an offensive game plan, offensive system, all in and of himself. Whenever he's on the court, he can take a game over. He's, a guaranteed 20, 25 points every night. It feels like that's why it's so hard to give up on him. But 7 years of the same thing, never knowing if Zion's going to be able to play in the next game, never knowing how long he's going to miss, trying to enter a season with some sort of hopes, building your entire game plan around having Zion, and then after 2 weeks, that's completely ruined. He's out. A number of players are out. There are times in this game where you're playing 3 rookies, 2 players on 2-way contracts, and that actually ended up being one of the lineups that looked the best. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it's just frustration, constant frustration. If everything that happens around this team is all about the frustration of the fan base, and a lot of it stems from Zion Williamson's inavailability. I'm sure that he could go somewhere and still have a great long NBA career. He's a super talented player, but I just don't think that there's any argument to be made that at this point that he should be in New Orleans for much longer. That stinks, because at one point he was like the savior of the city. The vibe whenever they won the lottery, they didn't even draft him. They just won the lottery to be able to select him. The vibe around the city was great. It felt like they finally had, like, after the frustration around Anthony Davis's end to his career, Chris Paul, the drama around his exit in New Orleans. It felt good to finally have another young player to get excited about. And now it's gone. It's just constant frustration. Now, it becomes a question of, do they trade him? I can't believe his trade value is very high right now. At some point, his contract's not fully guaranteed. You could just waive him and be done with it, and kind of have, as of how I believe it to be, he could get waived right now, get cut, and you deal with the money this year, and then because it's not guaranteed after this, it doesn't have any effect. At some point, maybe that's the way that they go. And I'm sure there are a lot of fans right now that would say, yeah, just cut him and cut your losses, be done with it. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the best idea. At some point, he'll come back, maybe this year. Who knows? And maybe a team wants to play him. Who knows if they want to pay him as much, because after another injury, he's played less than 50% of his available career games. It's hard to really sell that on someone. It's hard to sell it to the fan base of the team that he's been on for all these years. It's definitely hard to sell it to an opposing GM to actually get anything of value. But no matter what, I think it's time for the team to move on. Build around the young players they have now. Jeremiah Fears is the youngest NBA guard to have back-to-back 20-point games in history after tonight. Derek Queen, the defensive things are not great right now. I think he has a good defensive potential, but the offense is fun to watch. He's fearless going up against like a Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle tonight. He's an amazing passer. These are exciting things that I think the fan base needs to be able to build around. No more setting up the expectations of a new Zion, a new year, change happening, because it's not happening. And people are getting frustrated that they keep getting fed the same spiel at the beginning of every season only for it to not actually happen. I hope Zion goes on and has a great career after this, but I think it's time to call it an end in New Orleans. Figure out some way to move on from from the biggest distraction that the team has had, and that's saying something. All right, let's talk about the team that took the court on Tuesday night without Zion and what happened in the loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open up, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last second surprises whenever you check out. That's one of the most frustrating things about going to events. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event that you want to go to with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join all of us over on YouTube or on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. And we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the number one sports podcast network in the nation. I want to give a shout out to some of our everydayers, the Everyday Club. Fist of the Black Star, MC Evander, P-Lids59. These are the models of our community. Drop your comments, your everydayer comments. I know y'all already have dropped a comment on this video by the time you're listening to this because y'all are some of our everydayers. So everydayers, sound off in the comments. Maybe you can be the featured members of the Everydayer Club next time. All right, let's get into this loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And man, talk about, after all the frustration with Zion earlier today, talk about needing a win. Both literally because now they're 3-19, the season continues to slip away, but just morally, felt like they really needed this one. And they kind of started off slow again, to be expected, but it wasn't as bad as like the Lakers game per se. But then in the second quarter, it was this lineup of Micah Peavy, Trey Alexander, Bryce McGowens, Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears. It kind of changed turned the tides, started moving into a positive direction, brought the team back into the game. And then like Trey Murphy came in, the starters came back in, fed off of that momentum. The Smoothie King Center, the fans that were there were bumping. The vibes were great. They outscored the Timberwolves 43-27. They had a 15-3 run to end it, almost a 15-0 run, but it was a tough and one foul on Rudy Gobert at the end there. But the vibes were great. And then the second half came, and they lost the third quarter bad. They were a little bit more competitive in the fourth quarter, but it was enough for the Timberwolves to pull ahead, and then the Pelicans fall back, and then eventually went to overtime. And then as the Pelicans continued to do in these overtime games, it was a slow start, and then you blink, and it's actually the game's over. Fans are leaving. And then there's like still like a minute left in overtime, but it doesn't really matter because the game's over. It's tough because right now, especially in that second quarter, it's hard to get excited about anything with a 3-19 record, the worst record in the NBA. But they are actually, I think it's time I say something positive. They are actually playing really much better offensive basketball. They scored 142 points on the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that hangs their hat on their defense. Like they have Rudy Gobert, they have Jaden McDaniels, they have even they have a bunch of players that hang their hat on the defensive side of the ball. And as they should, they're a very good defensive team. You put up 142 points on them. You dominate them in the paint. You out-rebound them. You had more turnovers because of towards the end of the game. But for a lot of it, it was an even turnover matchup. You had much better fast break teams, fast break metrics. The James Borrego offense, I think, is working. They are running better plays. I think players like Micah Peavy, I'll say before we talk about him in the next segment, I'll say like made a great pass tonight to Trey Murphy that normally we've seen a lot of players. You see Trey Murphy open all the time, but no one makes the kick out. Micah Peavy had the option at 2, saw Trey for the easy 3. Trey hit the 3. That's, ball movement, the right decisions being made at the right times. I think that's something that is a good sign. And really good is that it's a bunch of the young players that, you have the frustration around all the Zion stuff. If you move on from Zion, if you move on from this current core, you have to turn to the young players. And right now they're looking like exactly the kind of players that you want to start to build around. And who knows if James Borrego is going to get the job after, you'd have to imagine they start winning some games for that to happen. But I think a good culture is being set. Players want to win. Players are showing effort. Like, this is the exact kind of game you want to see out of Trey Murphy after he has to leave. He has to miss a couple games due to right elbow soreness. And then, especially with the Zion injury, this is Trey Murphy's team now. Even when Zion comes back, I think right now, as of now, Trey Murphy is the star of this team. He is the face of this team. So on a night like tonight, when you have Anthony Edwards, who scores 44 points, Rudy Gobert is getting whatever he wants in the paint, Trey Murphy answered the call. He looked like a star in this game. 33 points. He had an incredible career high, 15 rebounds, had 4 assists, only 1 turnover. Great game from Trey Murphy. This is exactly what you want to see. Jeremiah Fears, 21 points, 7 of 13 shooting. Derek Queen, I think, responded very well because he looked pretty poor. And it's kind of something we've seen with Derek Queen, kind of starting slow, ending fast. But you saw the confidence kind of grow back at him. 21-point game. Jose Alvarado hit some big shots. I think it was, a game. He didn't have the best close to the game, but he had some nice moments. Kevon Looney even bought in. Like Bryce McGowan continues to buy in. Sadiq Bey. Shout out to Sadiq Bey, man. He's a hooper. He is just a flat-out hooper. 22 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. I know it's hard to really buy in right now because of the win-loss record, and, you can kind of feel it in the building. You can feel it in the locker room. You can feel it when talking to James Borrego after the games. This team needs a win at some point soon. Things are getting bad. You kind of hope the vibes of that Bulls win are going to help carry them. And I think they've helped carry them, like I've said, on the offensive side of the ball. Now, whenever you're scoring 142 points and losing, I think you can kind of see what needs to happen to fix that. The defensive side of the ball has been bad all season, and that's something that James Borrego has not really been able to improve upon at all. I think it's more about just being able to adjust to teams scoring on you by building up the offensive side of the ball. You're not going to be able to outscore everybody every night, as we've seen. They only have 3 wins. They only have 1 win in the past few weeks. That was against the Bulls. But, even in that Bulls game, they scored 130 points on you. Then the Grizzlies scored 133 on you. The Warriors, that was a game where no one could make a shot, but there were shots to be made on both sides that didn't get made. The Lakers scored 133. The Timberwolves scored 149. The defense has to get better. That is, the obvious thing, but trying to take a positive out of it. I think the offense has found something that works with these young players, with the players that, are maybe a little bit more reliable to be there for you. There are things to latch on and take into the next game against the Minnesota Timberwolves as well to be happy about. But at the end of the day, it was another loss. Unfortunate. All right, let's talk about the young players showing fight and why that is important moving forward. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when the momentum shifts, you move with it. I always knew the game, but never really had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the US. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Let's download the Robinhood app now to begin. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day, where you hear Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. You can also catch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders. You can talk to me here, talk to me in the comments, or talk to me over on my website, Pelicans Roundtable, about everything you want to know about the New Orleans Pelicans. All right. Amongst the mess, what's the future of the team? Where do they go now? They don't have their first round pick. They keep losing games, blah, blah, blah. I want to take a focus on, I think, the biggest positive of this team, and that is the young players. And I'm not just talking about Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. Obviously, those two are very big parts of your plan moving forward. They are what I believe to be the next central focus of this team once they decided to move on from this core of players, even if that is just moving on from Zion, like we talked about earlier. There are other players that people bring up in trade markets, trade rumors, or whatever. Got into that last episode. But if that happens, you have to start from somewhere. And where that is right now, it's kind of the people that are doing the unsung work. I asked Trey Murphy after the game. I was like, what did you think of the young guys in this one? Because it was that group we talked about earlier, where it was the two-way players. It was 3 rookies that changed the shift in this game. They played with so much. We talked about it up in the press box. Like, you could see a mindset change. It's these players who don't have tomorrow guaranteed. They're not making much money. A lot of them don't have real NBA contracts yet. And, they can't afford to sulk around and be upset with what's happening. They fought. They played hard. And even though they were going against guys like Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards, I think the biggest thing about this team right now is that there is simple, talent mismatch. Like, they don't have an all-NBA player to turn to whenever things are going bad. Anthony Edwards takes over in the second half. There is no one like that on this team right now. They just have a bunch of players who are playing their role and doing their best. And sometimes it looks good and sometimes it doesn't. But guys like Trey Alexander is someone I think I would like to see a little bit more of. He was like a mid-range assassin in college, and there are not a lot of players that you turn to and are like, oh yeah, you can get me a mid-range bucket. I love that this is the shot that we've landed on at the end of this possession. But Trey Alexander's one, like he shoots it with confidence, even though this is just his second game of the season. He takes one step, gets one pass. It's the top of the shot clock. He's just, all right, now's the time for me to size up and take a midi. And he hit it. Shout out to him. He played 12 minutes. He was a +8 on the game. Like I talked about, he was one of those players that came in and kind of changed the momentum. He hit a 3. He hit a couple of middies. And that's what he's going to do. And he's a young player that I think I'd like to see a little bit more of. Bryce McGowan's. Shout out to him. He turned into a starter with all these injuries. He's on a 2-way contract, and he's starting games and putting up good minutes. He's not, jumping off the stat sheet. And I think tonight was kind of a night where he kind of, you probably would have liked to have like a Herb Jones in there to close out. But, I think he's doing well with the opportunity he's gotten. Micah Peavy, in that last game, he didn't hit any threes tonight, but like in that last game, he hit 3. He was 3 of 5 from 3. He plays hard defense. He's a great cutter. There are a lot of times in this game where he was just set up by a perfect pass from Derek Queen. Almost, he gets caught off guard sometimes when making a cut because Derek Queen meets him with a perfect pass they kind of wasn't even expecting. And then, of course, we talk about these young players. Then you have Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. Jeremiah Fears is playing incredible basketball. We talked not too long ago about how in this new fast-paced scheme, there were a lot of mistakes. He was doing a little bit too much, making the wrong shot decision, kind of playing, holding the ball for a little bit too long. That wasn't the case right now. It hasn't been the case for a couple of games. He's playing really good basketball right now. And, whenever he's not on the court late in the game, you kind of think wow, where's Jeremiah Fears? It feels like he should be in here. Derek Queen, a great offensive night from him. I think there's a lot to grow on the defensive side of the ball. He is still a -17. But the point is, if the team has to go in another direction, I think you're fine with these types of players as the building block. They're showing a lot of fight and emotion, and that is what a team who has been down in the dumps for a long time needs. The city, should take all of that love and admiration they're waiting to give someone and show it to these young players because they're ready to accept the mantle of the team. And I think that's a great thing, a great light shining on the team right now. Especially they need it because there's no first round pick. There's no star rookie waiting to come in next year. All right. Thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball and Josh Lloyd because he can help you win your fantasy basketball leagues. That's what he's doing for me so far. But we'll see y'all tomorrow.